Good afternoon. Welcome to our celebration of service. I'm Ron Barnes, and it's an honor to be your president. The thought for the day: confidence isn't optimism or pessimism, and it's not a character attribute. It's an expectation to be positive for a positive outcome. Rosa Beth Mose Cantor made that comment. Another positive aspect today is have Charlotte share her reflection with us, and we're going to get a mic over to Charlotte. We always appreciate Charlotte Zitlow's comments and wisdom.
I wish I could stand up and look you all in the eye, but I'm not doing that. I'm sorry. But I am glad to be here, and I want to talk today. My theme is you never know. You never know. And last Sunday, I was sitting with the son of my dear friend, Julie Lawson, who died several weeks ago, and who had worked with me on my book on the election of 1971, et cetera, when we changed the community, and we really did. It's just beginning to come back. And while we were sitting there, we got two interesting phone calls. We were talking about, I was telling him that Julie Lawson's cat, which was very important to her, had been chosen by Judy Schroeder to keep him because and love him the way Julie did. But the cat ran away. And she was, Judy, forgive me if I take your words away from you, but she was devastated by that. She felt really bad. And so as we sat there, the phone rang, and it was Judy. And I had written Judy a letter saying, Judy, don't worry about it. Cats come back. They do. Frequently, I read about it all the time. And she was calling David to say the cat is back. So that was a great moment. And then I had been having trouble with my elbow, and the doctor who had treated me at the recommendation of Raj Adawi, he's up there, and he called me. Raj called me in the middle of that conversation with David and said, Charlotte, here's the information. I just called Dr. Delacqua. He'll call you tonight. So another win, and you never know. And we sat there, and I thought, this is a terrible world. All sorts of terrible things are happening, no matter internationally, nationally, locally. We've got one unhappy occurrence to make us miserable after another, but you never know. Something might come along that we totally don't expect, and that will bring us joy and happiness. And I began to think about Rotary and thought, how important it is. I don't know each of you in this room, and I certainly don't know each of you well. But every time I do sit down to talk to somebody, I find something different, interesting, and exciting about what other people are doing. And you never know what they are. Sue at the Unitarian Church. Swaney, thank you. See, I knew you would know. You never know. Sue Swaney, about 2 months ago, had a program about connectiveness in the community. The six steps of distance, that we all are interrelated. And I'm finding that that's true here in this club. Every time I start talking to somebody, I learn something new about them and some connection with something I've done or something that really interests me. And I began to think, with all this hubbub and intractable problems around the world, there are people out there that we would connect with, or that we are connected with, and that by being with that connectedness sometimes comes real joy, like finding the cat and finding the doctor Imagine calling Chapel, North Carolina, Chapel Hill, and say, Dr. Hadawi, please help me find a doctor who's disappeared in Bloomington. And sure enough, he found him in North Indianapolis. And so I was happy. Twice over in one evening, pretty good. Let's go on from here. But I do think the point is that my focus in world is to create a community. Well, we've got a community. The world is a community, and it has bad things in it, but it certainly has wonderful things in it. And we each of us contributed that every day to people around us and people that we don't even know. And so I just want to say, let's forget all those terrible things and just think about the good things and be glad that we can all commune with each other and find out new things. I just learned more from John than I ever knew about him. So be careful that I don't sit next to you, and then I'll have another chapter in my book. So you never know. Keep that in mind. Just keep going and look for the bright side, I guess. I'm not going to sing that. Okay. That's fine.
Thank you, Charlotte, for sharing your wisdom with us. I would like to also recognize a longtime Rotarian and friend, Tim Thrasher. Welcome back to Rotary, Tim. And Steve Wicks will introduce our guest today.
Good afternoon. We have 3 guests here today. 2 Rotaracts, June Wan and Ethan Fragoso. If you could both stand, please. And then we have a guest who is interested in Rotary, and he wandered in and he's sitting next to Jim Bright, Emerson Orante. And Emerson, you couldn't ask for a better source of Rotary information, but please don't hesitate to ask any of the rest of us any questions you might have. Joy, do we have any guests online?
Steve, yes, we do. And we have a very special guest joining us from France. We have Megan Gearhart, who is our Global Peace Scholar, who just 2 weeks ago moved from the Czech Republic to France. So we're so glad you're here. And then we also have joining us, I want to mention Leslie Kutzenkow from the Director of Philanthropy with Wonder Lab. So welcome to Leslie, and welcome our other guests.
Thank you, Joy, and thank you, Steve. We have some Rotarians celebrating birthdays this week. Lance Eberle's on February 11th, Forrest Gilmore on the 12th, Erica Kovacs on the 15th, Artie Levy on the 12th, Yolanda Trevino on the 15th, and our own special Valentine girl, Judy Witt, celebrates tomorrow. So congratulations to all of you. And Jeff Bradley has an anniversary. This is his 3rd year with our club, and he had 7 years at other clubs, so 10 years totally in Rotary. So congratulations, Jeff. Had some announcements. There is a board meeting this Thursday, and the board will deal with several upcoming items. One is the approval of the slate that will be presented to you at our club assembly next week. Also, a minor adjustment to the bylaws to expand the number of Rotarians serving on the board. So this meeting will be at the Dimension Mill Thursday at noon. The district conference is April 20th, and I would encourage all of you to consider going down. It's a one-day conference. Evansville is an easy place to get to with Interstate 69. And I think you'll find it a very informative way to get to meet Rotarians from our district. I also want to add that Rotaract is having a fundraiser. They need some more money to, one, expand their membership. I talked to Ethan before the meeting today, and they do need some dollars. I'm encouraging each of you to think about contributing to our Rotaract fellows. They're also looking at a service project in the greater Cincinnati area, and they'll need some funds to help cover the cost for that trip. So if you would like to contribute, we have a Rotarian in this club that's offered to already lean in with $250. And he'll match basically up to $250, whatever you're willing to give to Rotaract. You just simply need to see Natalie before you leave, and she'll just add it to your bill. But this is a great way to help our Rotaract Club and help Ethan with the leadership that he's given to that club. And we appreciate the work you're doing, Ethan. I'd like to have John Weichert come forward he's been a past Rotarian, and he came several weeks ago to enjoy a Rotary meeting. And he said the food was so good, he wants to come back. And, and I want to give him his new Rotary pen. Welcome, John. And again, if you don't know John, this is a good time to meet him today and get a chance to shake his hand and say, welcome to our club. We have some Paul Harris Awards. We have 2 of them today, and I'd like to ask Mike Baker to come forward to handle the official ceremonies.
Good afternoon, fellow Rotarians and guests. Randy, good to see you again. Megan, good to see you again, too. It's always nice. You never know, Charlotte, when somebody's going to show up you haven't seen in a while. Today, I have the honor of presenting 2 of our members with their first Paul Harris Fellow pins. Named after Paul Harris, who founded Rotary, a Rotarian becomes a Paul Harris Fellow after contributions totaling $1,000 been made to Rotary International. And Rotary International is the foundation that does all the good works throughout the world. So today, we have Bill Brown and Jim Capshew. Would you please join me up here on stage? We'll start with you, Bill. Bill's been in our club since 2021. When I ask his friends and cohorts one word that describes him, they all said, he's nuts. You know where that's going, don't you? Maybe that's because he belongs to the Indiana Nut Growers Association, and he's been planting hundreds of hazelnuts and pecan trees on his property north of Bloomington. Bill and his wife, Linda, have 3 children and 6 grandchildren. Professionally, he's a trained public architect. He designed the first energy positive public library in America, taught 4 years in the IU J. Irwin Miller Architectural Program in Columbus. He's currently the assistant director for, this sounds sort of like one of those names that only IU could come up with for a department, doesn't it? The assistant director for strategy and engagement of the IU Environmental Resilience Program, where his co-workers describe him as someone who lives his values, has endless energy, and is fun to be around. I was told he has an electric car that's smarter than he is. He apparently was driving, got to an intersection, the light turned green, he started pushing on the pedal and it wouldn't go. All of a sudden, the other direction, through a red light, another car went through. So sometime you probably can tell us more about that story. So that's number 1. Next is Jim Capshew. Jim has been a member of our club since 2018. He is labeled university historian, just recently retired from IU, where he was faculty at the IU Bloomington Department of History and Philosophy of Science and Medicine. Jim has authored several major books, including one on Herman Wells, The Promise of the American University. What you may not know is he started this book when he was going to IU, and he actually lived in Dr. Wells' home as one of the few select students that could live there and help take care of Dr. Wells and do things. The rumors that there were parties when Dr. Wells was out of town have not been substantiated. You would expect nothing less of someone that earned an Eagle Scout. which Jim has. Anyway, Dr. Wells, I haven't got the book yet, but I mean, Jim started on this actually when he was in school. So he had personal meetings with Dr. Wells, and then later in life finished the book. So I'm going to go down to the IU bookstore, which I'm assuming I can get it there and get a copy. Jim got his BA in psychology from IU and his master's and PhD in the history and sociology of science from the University of Pennsylvania. He received the Trustees Teaching Award in 2006. And as I mentioned, he was an Eagle Scout earlier in life. He's an avid IU basketball fan, men and women, a proud father of 3. And in 2023, all 3 of his kids were married in the same year. So that had been fun and expensive. So I've got someone going to help me. I'm going to present the certificate. Bill? Where are you, Trent? Okay. Maybe I should have picked somebody else. Oh, never mind. Congratulations. Rotarians, would you please join me in recognizing our 2 newest Paul Harris Fellows? You gotta watch Jim. He's always got the camera.
I'd like to have all of the Paul Harris Fellows in the room stand and be recognized. By the way, if you wondered where these Hershey kisses came from, Natalie is giving us all a kiss today. So thank you, Natalie. Now to introduce our program for today, Michael Shermas, our program co-chair.
You know, this is a great club. I'm honored only not to be part of it and get to hang with you all, but to be part of bringing some splendid speakers in week after week. Today's speaker is going to be another good one. How do I know? Because he truly cares about serving our community. As part of the Nonprofit Alliance, I've had the good fortune to work with the United Way of South Central Indiana. As part of the City of Bloomington, I've been a United Way campaign co-chair for many years. And to sound really old, I started working with United Way of Monroe County, as it was called back then in the 90s when I was on their board. I'm a vanguard giver and feel good about knowing how my money gets spent supporting the social services of this community. It's with gratitude that I introduce today's speaker, Randy Rogers. If I could pick someone to run United Way, I want them to just ooze empathy and kindness. That's my experience with Randy. Randy Rogers is a proven philanthropic leader with extensive experience in strategic initiatives, board development, and fundraising. He serves as the president and CEO of United Way of Southern Central Indiana, where he is responsible for all aspects of the organization, including development, operation, and board engagement. Prior to returning to Indiana, he served as the CEO of Tucson Association of Realtors MLS of Southern Arizona and Tucson Realtors Charitable Foundation, where he is responsible for day-to-day operations for the 6,500 member association and 7,500 subscriber regional MLS and charitable foundation, including 3 boards of directors. He currently serves on the St. Mark's Methodist Church Personnel Committee, Bloomington Economic Development Corporation, and is a member of the Bloomington Chamber of Commerce. He is a graduate of the IU O'Neill School of Public Environmental Affairs and holds a certificate in fundraising management from the IU Lilly Family School of Philanthropy. In his free time, he enjoys a wide range of adventure activities, including cycling, running, hiking, or a simple walk in the woods. Without further ado.
Thank you, and thanks for the opportunity to be here with all of you today. That was quite an introduction. I really appreciate that. I'm probably better known for my 2 kids, both my kids went to IU. I was really fortunate that they chose here, as my daughter was in that stage of looking elsewhere and then turned back and said, you know, this isn't a bad place. And found her niche with the Little 500 and was really fortunate to be a Little 5 rider and a winner and two-time winner. So pretty surreal for a dad to be a part of something like that. And then my son was on the tennis team. So we're an IU family steeped in all of this. I was an IU student back in the late 80s, came back here in 1995, and we've made our home here. So this is our place. Thank you to the board of directors. Estelle O'Neill is in here on our board, so really appreciate you taking some time to be here today. The pressure is really on. Michael, thanks, and thanks for those of you who invited me to speak today. We also have in the room several of our friends and partners, friends of mine, but partners in the work that we do. And I could call them out, but there's so many of them here. And they may be organizations that are fighting the battles that we're fighting in this community, but they also are friends who are donors. They're friends who give grants. It's just an amazing group of individuals. And we're really, and I'll talk a little bit about our community later here. But you're here to hear about United Way of South Central Indiana. That's a new name for some of you who know, and I'll talk about that in just a second here. But this is not my father's United Way. I'm 57 years old, so I can say it's not my father's United Way. United Way of old was, we trust United Way to know what to do in our community. We're going to support them. We don't have to do all the research on all of the organizations. What has changed? What has changed over time? The agencies, the partner agencies that are on the ground doing the work are really good at what they do. They're also better fundraisers. They're better marketers. So what's the purpose of United Way? I don't know. You can go straight to Beacon and support them if that's your interest, and off they go. Each of you are incredibly generous, and you're educated. And if you aren't educated, you can become educated really quickly. So again, you don't need to trust United Way to make those decisions for you. If I want to know about Forest and Beacon, Forest, I'm going to pick on you a lot today. If I want to know about Forest, I'm going to call Forest. If I want to know about my sister's closet, I'm going to look them up and try to figure out who they are, what they do, and I can support them directly. So again, you have changed. Workplaces have changed. United Way was always known as the workplace campaign. Workplaces don't exist anymore in the same way that they used to exist. So that has changed. We used to be able to walk in and sit across the table from Michael, and it was, you all remember this, it was the, Michael, you're going to support us this year, aren't you? Or it was Michael doing that to somebody else. That's all changed, right? It's online. You're not in the workplace. So many different things have happened. So United Ways are trying to figure out, how do we change? How do we adapt to these changes? How do we become a new United Way that's issue-oriented, that works with our partners, and maybe is not a mile wide and an inch deep, but might actually be able to tackle some of the community's biggest challenges? So I talked a little bit about us, United Way of South Central Indiana. We used to be United Way of Monroe County. We picked up Lawrence and Orange County last summer. Why did we do that? Well, people, you know this, people are living and working in multiple counties. People in Bedford live in Monroe County. People in Monroe County are working in Greene. People in Greene and Owen are, you know, it's just across the board. Maybe it's cost of housing. Maybe it's for whatever reason. Maybe they've got land. Maybe it's their access. We're also finding that because of that, the individuals that we are serving, the individuals that our partner agencies are serving, also cover this footprint, and some even greater than this footprint, but they cover this footprint. Ivy Tech of Bloomington, a great example. They've got a location down in Lawrence County in Bedford. So it just, you can see that changes there. We also did the merger because we were both doing, the United Way down there was doing, we were both doing bookkeeping, we were both doing audits, we both had office space. It just made more sense to combine into one. We kept the staff person down there. She's our director of rural engagement. She's tackling these surrounding counties and what can we do there? What's really important? And United Way, although it's an international organization, is hyper local. And that's really important when you look at a map like this, because the needs that we have in Monroe County and Bloomington are different than Linton, are different than French Lick, are different than Spencer. So we have the opportunity to be hyper local about the work that we do in each of these areas. If I can leave you with something today, if you walk out of this room and don't remember anything other than the good dessert and the spicy Mardi Gras or Fat Tuesday food, remember this: 46% of the people in our community are within an ALICE population. And I'm going to explain ALICE in just a second here, but 46%, almost half of the people. Also remember the words cliff effect. How many people know when I say the word cliff effect, just have a general idea what that is? There's a few of you in here. Okay. So what is the ALICE population? The ALICE population is asset limited, income constrained, employed. Many of you probably remember the phrase working poor, right? That was the old phrase. We don't like that phrase anymore. ALICE is a study that is done by United Way out of New Jersey, and they do a national study. Many of the states adopt this. Indiana is one. We have information by county. These are people that you work next to, you park next to, you walk down Target next to, but they are one emergency away from a catastrophe. They don't have savings. They don't have, maybe they don't even have a support system. What happens to my kids if they have a problem? They call mom and dad, right? Dad, my tire just blew out of my car. I don't have money in savings. Okay, sure, I'll Venmo you some money. You can get your tire fixed. You'll pay me back, right? Sure. They don't have that support network. They don't have that savings they can turn to. They might be working a second job, but if they don't have transportation, what do? If they get sick and get COVID, what do? Childcare closes, what do? That list is long. 23% of the people in our community are within poverty. By statistical numbers, 23% of the people are in poverty. And that's governmental lines that tell you what poverty is. Another 23% are in this ALICE population. There are plenty of services, and I'm not saying it's enough, but there are plenty of services that do handle the poverty line and below. But it's this next population that they're trying to figure out how do they get ready for their next interview. So they go to My Sister's Closet to buy clothes. They go to the food bank to get food for their kids because they're trying to figure that out. They have their kids at Boys and Girls Club so they can work an additional job. This is a tough population. This is, I think, an area where we're going to start to see some work, and I'm starting to understand that it is a huge need in our community to address this population because they don't have the services. So I talked a little bit about the cliff effect. The cliff effect, sorry, I've got my timer going here, apologize. The cliff effect, I thought, before I took this role, what's good? You give somebody a raise in their job. That sounds great, but there are certain trigger points that when you give them a raise, they lose benefits. So although it sounds good, although we think how positive it is, I'm giving somebody a $2 an hour raise. Well, that may just put them in a certain category that they end up losing because they lose different benefits. SNAP is a food benefit. So you get to a certain point and you lose that food benefit. Childcare subsidies are a big one. We know childcare in this community, many communities around the country, it's a real challenge. But childcare, you get to a certain point over $33,000 and you lose childcare benefits. So if you are familiar with somebody who has a child in childcare right now, infants are easily $700 a month. That's after your taxes, $700 a month. You have 2 kids, it almost doesn't make sense for a family member to work. You get to that point. You get to a different level, $45,000 a year, and you're losing childcare for your, or health insurance for your kids. I mean, these are different points that we think, wow, wouldn't it be great? We're just gonna pay them more. $45,000, $50,000 a year is a good salary. But look what it does when they hit these different. So the cliff effect and the Alice population. We don't think about it. I didn't think about it. I never had an idea about that. I was so fortunate. I worked at IU. I had great insurance. I had a great job. I had a great support system. I had a spouse who worked. We were fine. Never thought about this, but I'm pulling up next to people that I now look back and think, how much were they struggling? How much were they struggling to just make ends meet every month? And they were making choices about, do I feed my kids? Do I take them to Wonder Lab for the weekend? Or do I buy them new shoes? Can I get them Christmas presents? Those are tough decisions to make as a family. We sat around the kitchen table and had conversations. Okay, are we gonna do this? Are we gonna do that? But it was, are we gonna go on vacation? Are we gonna redo the deck? It wasn't, are we gonna put food on the table? These are the conversations that 46% of our population in this community is having on a day-to-day basis. What else does United Way do? We try really hard to think about what our community impact is going to be. So we do a campaign. I'm not going to talk about fundraising today. I'm sure a question will come up about it. But we support the community with over $600,000 in annual grants and support that go out to our partner agencies in various forms. It's a whole variety of different ways. Up in the top, EFSP is Emergency Food and Shelter Program. We run an emergency food and shelter distribution of funds. And we're working with our partner agencies in that funding to be able to support their needs. COAD, Monroe County Community Organizations Active in Disaster. The floods happened, the tornadoes happened last summer in Gosport area. Red Cross is on the scene, Salvation Army's on the scene. Lots of support for that. What happens as soon as those agencies pull off and head off to the next disaster? COAD steps in for longer term recovery. Those families in that community are still really struggling. It's not like all of a sudden Red Cross is there, great, they're good, and then they walk away. No, they struggle for a long time. How do you get a roof on your house? How do you repair this? The list is long of the things that they need to work through. Dolly Parton's Imagination Library. Many of you probably know who Dolly Parton is, obviously, but she started a library program many years ago, and it's books in the hands of kids. We run that out of Lawrence and Orange counties. We're going to look to expand that in the years to come. The state of Indiana made a commitment to that to pay half of the fees. The governor stepped up and said that's what we want to do in the state legislature. So we're going to continue that, and that's a really great program to get books out in the hands of kids. It's a no barrier program, so it could go to any child, but we do know statistics say that it's going out to those that are in most need. I wish we knew whether they read them or not, but at least they're getting a book in their hand, and that's a really important thing. Truancy and mentorship programs in Monroe County, we don't have a huge problem with that. Smart Start's been in place for a number of years and they do an excellent job. Our school system is strong. Our community is educated. They want to send their kids to school. We've got a good setup here. But you go down to Lawrence and Orange County, you've got a different narrative there. There is a different narrative. School doesn't mean the same thing. Graduating high school doesn't mean the same thing. Going to college is not in their vocabulary because mom and dad didn't do it and grandma and grandpa didn't do it, if they even know who grandma and grandpa are and if they even know who mom and dad are. So, right, you got all these challenges that are facing there. So we've got people in second grade that are missing 30 days of school. 30 days out of 180 days of the state requirement to attend, they're missing a lot at second grade. You do that again at third grade, you do that again at fourth grade. Holy smokes, where does that put them in their education system? Financial empowerment programs, and I'll talk, I think that's my next slide. We do several things around financial empowerment programs. We organize and run the Financial Stability Alliance. That's where we bring a group of individuals together that are interested in this work of how do we create a stable platform for families. We work with a financial coaching program. Bank on Bloomington, many of the banks are there and they end up with creative loan services in different ways they can help individuals. And then our free community tax service. Last year alone, we have 9 sites, served over 1,000 individuals and saved either in fees or got refunds back of over $1 million for those 1,000 clients. So volunteer driven, we organize it and run it, but it's volunteers who step up and do taxes for individuals in our community that meet certain financial thresholds. So really valuable service to those individuals. We also were a partner with the city and the county and the community foundation to tackle the housing insecurity or the homelessness problem in our community. Heading Home came on board with some funding from those organizations. United Way was a partner at the table with this. Our approach, the community's approach, is housing first. We want to get individuals into housing and stable housing that will help in the other things that come about. This is many partners here. There's a picture of New Hope, but Beacon and Wheeler Mission, and the list goes on of those that are playing a really critical part in this. The affordable housing side, we know if you've tried to buy a house recently or are familiar with the market, we know how affordable housing is a real challenge. Think about that, go back a couple slides to that cliff effect, and you're paying childcare, yet that house that you and I maybe bought 10 years ago or knew of for 150,000 is now 250, 280,000. That's a big difference, and wages haven't kept up. So that's a real challenge. And then how do we get them into that stable housing? You know, partners like Habitat for Humanity play an important role in that, but they can only build so many homes. So how do we engage? What do we do from an advocacy perspective to work with Trent? Where'd Trent go? To work with Trent and others that are in our elected officials roles so that we can change some policies and get to a point where we can have some affordable housing. We can build some more. We can get people into housing. The important thing to remember about Heading Home here is we have strong partners like Beacon that are taking care of the immediate needs today. What Heading Home is trying to do is change the infrastructure we have so that people don't end up in that situation. How do we make those changes and how do we get somebody there so they don't end up in a homeless situation where there are some challenges? So what's our future look like? We're still going to do some workplace campaigns. Indiana University is a big part of that. We have great community partners. We'll start to see a shift to some more individual donors. We'll be a little more traditional fundraising campaign in some ways, but it's really important because we don't want to take away from our partners. So the last thing I want to do is take money away from my sister's closet. because they're doing a great job. So how do we get on top of that? How do we help in some ways that the community can come together to tackle something that maybe one agency can't do on their own? We have grants, we have planned giving, all the things you would know. Those are all going to lead to some impact initiatives. Who are our partners that might be working? And we're in the midst of our strategic planning right now, trying to determine what are some of those key impact initiatives that we can tackle. Safety net's always going to be important. There is always a role in our community for those individuals that just need help today. That's an important piece of our infrastructure in this community. It's a lifeblood. How do we help those individuals? And then I think we have a role for some interesting ideas of opportunity grants. You know, how can we support organizations that might have a one-time need or have a special program that they want to run that falls out of a typical grant cycle for organizations, but they just need $5,000 or $2,500 to run a new education program. How can we play a role in that? I think there's some neat opportunities there. So my timekeeper is standing over here, so it's not my Father's United Way. I think as we look to the future, we're a convener. We've always been a convener, but I think there's an ever more need to be a convener today to bring the community together to tackle some of our biggest problems. We're blessed in this community because we have people who step up and say, I have an idea for a new nonprofit to tackle this need. That's really great on one hand, and I'm not discounting that in any way, shape, or form. But I think if we can bring folks together to tackle those needs in a more collaborative and coordinated way, I think we could really make some significant changes to that Alice population, to that population that's on the verge, to that population that's in poverty. I think we can do some really great things. So with that being said, I will open the floor to questions. Hands are shooting up already.
So this is sort of a two-part question. What is the area that you believe you make the most impact? And that can be anecdotal, and also when you donate, can you say, I want my money to go here and that sort of thing?
Yep. So two parts to that. The answer to the first one. What's the area we think we can make the most impact? We're trying to figure that out right now. I think that's why we're going through some strategic planning to try to figure out where are the gaps in our community, where are the partners that might need the most help in our community to tackle those needs. We don't want to duplicate. There's no reason to duplicate. And I'll use the best example of that is Smart Start, that is a partner program with the Community Foundation. One of their leadership initiatives is excellent. They do great work. There's no reason for us to try to duplicate that work out there. So I think as we look to the future, we'll look at where those gaps are. The second part of that question was, can I donate to United Way and have it go to a partner agency or have it go somewhere that we want it to go to? Yes, you can. And that is one of the things United Way has done for years, is that, again, you can trust that we know the agencies that are strong in this community, and we will steward your resources very well so that when you give to us and say, I want it to go to the Boys and Girls Club or to Beacon or to X, then we can make that happen. So yes, that is still a possibility.
I'd like to know how people in need in your community, the South Central community, are made aware of this various services that you offer. Those folks in need are oftentimes disconnected from the community in some way or another. How are they made aware of what you have to offer?
You hit the nail on the head on one of the toughest challenges that is out there. The industry as a whole in various segments will call them navigators or case managers, or there's titles like that that are out there. Hopefully somebody in need comes across one of those individuals. It's a navigator or case manager or somebody that can help point them in the right direction to get where they're headed. it's tough. I mean, I wish I had the great answer for your question, because that is one of the biggest struggles, is there are needs. And again, you think about that Alice population, they're working 2 jobs. Most of the services that they can access are open from 8 to 5. Well, if I'm not getting off my job until 5 o'clock, what am I supposed to do? So I either have to take time off work. It's a real challenge. So I don't have a great answer for that. I know that, again, some of our partner agencies have navigators or case managers, and they will help those individuals. But I can guarantee you that I could go to almost every agency and they would say, I could use another case manager. I could use another navigator. And I think that would start to cut into it, but they can only handle so many. And there's a mental toll that those individuals go through, because think about sitting at the desk or outreach or being out in a homeless camp, trying to help those individuals and hearing those stories every day. That's a toll on that case manager and that navigator. That's tough. That's tough.
Thank you for the work that you do at the United Way. It's very appreciated. My Sister's Closet is seeing more and more people walk through our doors that are in this Alice population, or even worse, they're just really far below the poverty level. I don't think people quite realize that the 42% is much larger than it used to be. Could you put that in perspective from 10 years ago, 5 years ago, pandemic levels, and how that's changed?
I don't know the answer to that. I don't know what the population, I've been in this role 14 months. I don't know the long-term trajectory of what's happened with the Alice population. I think it would be obvious in the sense to say that that population has grown dramatically in the last few years. It is a number that I can find and see what it was 10 years ago. But I think irregardless, 46% is 46%. Holy smokes. We should all be alarmed by that number regardless. And even if it were 39%, we should still be alarmed by that number. Charlotte.
Yeah. Randy, I found recently in my voluminous box of information from Once Upon a Time, a list of the not-for-profit agencies in Monroe County. It was about 200. And now I think we have hundreds. We have hundreds. And I just wonder, it seems to me that maybe we have too many sources. And I think you did address that, but maybe you want to expand on that. I think it's probably more difficult than it sounds on the surface, that everybody thinks, oh, I have this great idea. We'll do it this way. And then they start up and they get excited, members of their boards, and they find out they're on a path that's more or less the same, but it's not the same. And I think it's a delusion. They all need a director and they all need a budget.
Yep.
And that seems to me scary. We are all here, and we're lucky to be in this room, but I don't think we have the slightest gut understanding of how many needs are so complex in this community and how difficult it is to get to the right one for help.
Yeah, Charlotte, you're hitting the nail on the head of something that our community deals with, and communities across the country deal with this, is this growth of nonprofits over the last 10 or 20 years. And, you know, the good news in that is that they might zero in on a particular need that is so special. What I have observed, what I would love to see, this is Randy Rogers speaking. I'm not sure this is United Way and the board of directors speaking here. So put an asterisk next to this comment. I would love to see us figure out how we get better coordination out there, because what ends up happening is that Tracy can only take so many calls from a agency to ask for money, right? At some point, she's going to be tired. She's going to have donor fatigue. And we're going to then have to go to John, and John's going to get donor fatigue. Yeah, I think that we can support a lot, but I think if we can coordinate better, we can reduce expenses like what we've done with our merger. I think it's a perfect example. I think we can reduce expenses for agencies, but I think we can also find ways to better coordinate the services, because My Sister's Closet is the same people that are at My Sister's Closet probably are living in a Habitat house. Maybe they've come from a Beacon facility. They're going to the food pantry. How do we put that together? I don't know the answer to that yet, but it's what keeps me awake at night. Because I think when you have agencies that all are paying for a copier, and they're all paying for IT services, and they're all paying for HR. Yeah, wait a minute, we got to be smarter than this. We got to be smarter than this.
So we have time for one more question. I just want to jump in. I do think the work that you're doing with Heading Home and that Mary's leading is starting going the right path towards bringing the agencies together to work
Yep.
together.
Yep.
So I think the challenge is getting everyone aware of that work so that they can funnel in appropriately. But having said that, last question.
Thank you. I'm interested to know how you collect the information to assess those needs. What methodology do you use? For instance, do you do focus groups? Do you actually interview folks who are facing those challenges? Or where does that information come from for the assessment itself?
Are you talking about needs that United Way is going to try to figure out how to tackle, or
Yes,
individual?
yes.
Okay.
So the needs themselves.
Yeah, so again, another thing that I have discovered in this community is that we have a lot of studies. There are a lot of studies that happen out there. The city does studies, the health department does studies, Regional Opportunity Initiative does studies, Community Foundation does studies. There's a lot of studies out there. I don't think we need another study. I don't think we need another focus group. I think we know what our community's challenges are. But I think through conversations, and I think it's going to be a little bit of a, let's get started and tackle some of these. Tracy mentioned Heading Home. Heading Home got started, and they were basically, if you know the adage of building the plane while they're flying it, that's what they were doing. They were building the plane and flying it at the same time. And I don't think we're at that stage, because I think we know some of our community's greatest needs, but I do think that we'll take a coalescing of all of these different studies that are out there. And I actually had one of my staff members, you'll get a kick out of this, had one of my staff members that put them all together and said, Chat GPT, tell me what this all means. And she went through, and it kind of brought us to something that we're like, that was pretty easy to do. You just hit an AI button and off it goes. I think the challenge we have is where are those gaps and how to find those. And I think that's sort of the process we're under right now, is trying to figure out where the greatest need is. So I'm being kicked off the stage. I really appreciate the time today. Thank you very much.
Really an informative discussion of the new United Way, and it's really helpful for me to have a better understanding of what's happening in our community. So thank you, Randy. A donation will be made to the Sycamore Land Trust in your name for your presentation today. So thank you. Obviously, it takes a lot of work to have this meeting work. And again, I want to call Natalie out to say thank you, Natalie, for all the work you do on a daily basis for our club. We have an overachiever in Steve Wicks. He was also the greeter and did introductions today. So Steve, thank you for that. Our Zoom host, Joy Harder, thank you. Our reflection and wisdom from Charlotte Zidlow, we appreciate that. Tracy Jovanovic, thank you as always, as our camera and mic operator. And Tyler Martin Nichols, thank you for producing this for us today. So if you'll all stand now and join me in the four-way test of the things we think, say, and believe. First, is it the truth? Second, is it fair will to all? Third, will it be of goodwill and better friendships? Fourth, will it be beneficial to all concerned? Fifth, is it the truth and fun? And by the way, next meeting is the 20th in this room. It's our club assembly. It's an important one. We're going to share with you the strategic plan and a lot of activities. So please come. We are adjourned.